Happy Monday, everyone, and it is the day after, the day that was, where Rory completed the Grand Slam. And I'm still shocked. Hasn't really hit home yet, actually, the fact that Rory has done it and has finally got across the line. I think a lot of us golf fans want him to win, and a lot of people have formed an opinion about Rory, especially around the Live saga. And I guess one thing you can't dispute is how professional he takes his game, his body, his health, and everything else around that as well. So, huge amount of respect I have for him and his, I guess, professionalism in that sense. So, we're going to do a deep dive into some things about Rory off field in terms of, again, his training, diet, recovery strategies, etc. And this is plucking, I guess, research from different articles and podcast interviews, and I've been doing a lot of reading and listening this afternoon, and it's been really interesting. And a lot of this stuff I knew about Rory, but it's great to just delve into it again, share it with you, so you get some sort of benefit from it as well. So let's just go into this quote to start with. So this is a quote Rory had mentioned. So I just have to say, look at who I was and where I was as a golfer in 2010. I started training in September 2010, and look at me now. Since I started training, I've won 4 majors and got to world number 1. So it can only help. And this is obviously after that major run that he had. And when he's talking about training, he's talking about strength training specifically here. And I'm just going to drag this up here actually, because it's going to be interesting about his timeline and I guess what influenced him to get into training. So as a lot of you may know, Rory was always a child prodigy. He was on TV shows and had a really strong reputation coming out of Northern Ireland there, where he was destined to be a really good professional. And I believe his dad put a bet on when he was, I can't remember the exact age, but to win a certain number of majors by the age he turned 25, which Rory completed, and he won a big chunk of cash. But yeah, he was destined for greatness at a young age. Not to say that a lot of these kids coming through are going to follow that same path, but Rory's had a lot of potential, and obviously he's put in the work to match it. So let's look at the timeline. So he turned pro in 2007. 2010 he had a major back injury, so that was the L4-5 disc herniation. And why did Rory injure himself? So this could be a combination of practice load, swing fundamentals. Though with Rory, he's quite different. Obviously, he's super fast. The way that he uses his body is quite incredible. So one thing I've mentioned here, Rory, the way he used to swing, this is from data around that period. He separates at 66 degrees compared to most professionals that separate 45 degrees in their X factor, so in that downswing separation. So he's got a lot of torque and twist on the spine, which means he needs to be super mobile, super strong, super stable, so that he can sustain that. So after that injury, he decided to work with a exercise physiologist, fitness trainer, to make sure he was going to be able to get the most out of his golf career, essentially. And also his rotational speeds. He rotates, or used to rotate at least, at around 720 degrees per second. PGA Tour average is around 550, 560, I believe. And there is a video here you can watch. I've included the link down below. If you want access to that, just shoot me a message and I'll share this with you. Where Dr. Greg Rose, who's one of the founders of TPI, he has Rory's data there. So he shows you his sequencing and his pressure mapping. So, well, not his pressure mapping, sorry, his body rotation. So that's really interesting for you to watch. And yeah, so currently, since 2010, he's consistently trained and he's always optimizing. So Rory is one of those players that's always trying to get that extra 1%, even though he's been world number 1 for quite a period of time. Obviously, we've had other pros come in and take the ranks with Rahm and Scheffler and Brooks, but he's always been in that top 10, hasn't he? So he's always constantly trying to get better. And when we're looking at five fundamentals I like to think about when it comes to golf performance, we're looking at body, technique, mental side of golf, nutrition, equipment, and there's so many other things you can put in here as well. So, but when it comes to golf performance, these are the 5 things I think Rory's doing really well. Obviously, equipment, he's got that handled by TaylorMade. Nutrition, we'll talk about that. The mental side, he's got Bob Rotella on his team at the moment, and I think that's been a huge benefit from him. If you haven't read any of Bob Rotella's books, please do. Golf is not a game of perfect. It's fantastic. It's great when you're driving to the course to remind yourself on some of these strategies Dr. Bob talks about. Obviously his technique, and I'm very biased, obviously being a physiotherapist with the body being there. So let's talk about his gym routines. So firstly, we're talking about strength, power, athleticism, and injury prevention, which is the main one. That is why Rory started in the first place. And a lot of people that don't understand the science behind strength training will say it causes injuries, whereas a lot of us in the medical field know that a correct strength training routine will reduce injuries by a huge amount. So roughly 66%, give or take, injuries can be reduced by a good strength training routine. And we're talking about overuse injuries, so tendon injuries, back stress injuries, a lot of those injuries that are related to a lot of golf practice and a lot of reps. So we look at his exercises he's typically doing for strength. We're looking at deadlifts, lunges, pull-ups, presses, a lot of compound lifts that a lot of you will have in your program if you're training from a gym. When we're looking at power, he's in the past discussed doing box jumps, different variations, med ball slams, battle ropes. He includes a lot of anti-rotation work. So essentially with that, we're trying to resist the forces of rotation. So if you think about trying to keep yourself stable in a pull-off press, if we're pushing out, the weight's trying to rotate us a certain direction. So we're trying to resist against that rotation, which is what we're trying to do in a golf swing. Our body is trying to get taken in all different directions with the club and the force of the club. And we want to be able to be stable. And with a guy like Rory's swing, it's a huge amount of force that's trying to drag him towards the ball, especially into that extension move. When you swing at 100 miles per hour, that club is trying to pull you towards the ball at roughly 80 pounds. So it's a huge amount of force to be able to resist. And 2 things I really like and I'd like you to think about. So post-workout breathing. So after a session, a lot of you might feel a little bit amped, feel like the heart rate's a little bit high. So Rory will do a breathing technique for 3 to 4 minutes. He'll take an inhale for 4 seconds, then exhale for 6 seconds. And he does that for 3 to 4 minutes. If you haven't done breathing work before, I would say start with a minute. Sometimes it can make you lightheaded, so do work up to that. And one thing I love is no major differences between tournament weeks, just less load. And why we do that, because if we just completely dropped your strength training during a tournament week, you're going to find that you will regress. Let's say if you're a competitive golfer like some of you are, if you have 5 to 10 tournaments a year, or if you have 20, 30 tournaments a year, if you're constantly taking these big rest weeks, that strength is going to gradually plateau and decrease. So Rory, he'll do, again, similar movements, but just less volume. So less reps or less weight, but he wants to make sure he is maintaining as best he can. When it comes to nutrition, firstly, high protein intake. He is getting roughly 170 grams of protein, and he's taking in 1 gram per pound body weight. There we go. So again, for me, I do per kilo. So I weigh 90 kilos. I try and get 2 grams of protein per kilo. So 180 grams. He is gluten-free, so he's trying to minimize that. And this has been circulating a lot this week. He's reduced his carbs. So even the highest level athletes do take breaks. They do have their cheat days or cheat meals. So Rory notoriously loves chocolate and ice cream. So over the last year, he's tried to chop that out a little bit more. So he's taken less and less. Another really big thing for sleep performance is no caffeine after 2 p.m. Caffeine has a half life of 6 to 10 hours, depending on what you read. So if you are taking caffeine later in the afternoon, 4 or 5 p.m., you're going to notice it's harder to get to sleep, obviously. So that's something to consider. When it comes to recovery and regeneration, so Rory is at the course, and we might actually reword this to per round. Excuse the typing here. It's been a long day. Up early for the Masters and now presenting this, but I would like it no other way. So at the course 3 hours prior, he also does an ice bath first thing in the morning, if possible, 3 minutes. There's a lot of good research, obviously, that it helps the immune system. It's going to make you a lot more alert. And I think another good thing as well, if you've done ice baths or cold showers in the past, if you do it the first thing in the day, it is hard, but it gives you this mental edge, well, I find it does, that you've done that first hard thing of the day. So a lot of the other hard things during your day become easier. Obviously sleep, he uses a Whoop band. If you haven't got one, certainly check them out. They're fantastic. Great to track sleep, heart rate, your exercise load. So I believe Rory is an investor as well as Justin Thomas, but regardless, a fantastic product. After his rounds, he uses muscle release tools, compression boots, and typically he'll have physio massage where he's just trying to flush the blood and promote recovery there. Mindset. So again, he's working with Dr. Bob Rotella. He's trying to block out the noise. And one thing he said a lot, if you listen to his press conferences this week, and I'm a golf sicko obviously, so I've listened to most of his press conferences. He's mentioned this a number of times. He's not looking at his phone. For him, it doesn't matter. He's obviously got one job, or he had one job for the week, which he achieved. And for him, looking on social media and different platforms wasn't going to help him. And also the other thing is perspective. And a lot of these players talk about that when they have a family. But after his rounds this week, he talked about how he went to go and spend time with his wife, Erica, and daughter, Poppy. So he was watching kids' shows and things like that. So obviously for him, a rough first day. Spent time with his family at home, reset, regathered, and then obviously had some really good rounds from there. But that's some information about Rory. Hope you enjoyed that. But again, it just shows you what some of the best in the world are doing. I think the key takeaways are obviously you want to be consistent with your training, keeping a balance. You want to continue training throughout your competitive weeks or your bigger tournament weeks. And with diet, try and minimize caffeine after 2 p.m. And also, probably the overarching thing is just 1%ers. Golf is a game of 1%ers, and these 1%ers can add up to really, really positive benefits. So changing one thing here, one thing there, that can start to really accumulate in a great way for you. Hope you enjoyed it, like I mentioned, and looking forward to seeing you all again soon for another tutorial.